Introducing the characters and setting. My name is Madison Greene, and I'm a 35-year-old Mexican-American woman living in the sun-baked suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona. If you asked anyone in my neighborhood, they'd probably describe me as hardworking, kind-hearted, and maybe a little too trusting for my own good. I immigrated to the U.S. in my early 20s, chasing a dream of stability and a genuine home, a hope that always felt just out of reach in the chaos of my childhood in Monterey. 10 years have passed since I married Ethan Greene, a 41-year-old financial analyst who grew up in a cozy, all-American family not too far from here. People saw us as the perfect couple. He, with his easy charm and movie star grin. Me, quietly nurturing our lives together, raising our 6-year-old daughter, Grace. Phoenix, with its endless blue skies and saguaro silhouettes, should have been the backdrop for a simple story about an immigrant chasing the American dream and finally finding it. Except, of course, real life doesn't work like the movies. My best friend, Jessica Miller, has lived next door for years. She's the type of person who lights up a room. 32, blonde, athletic, a local teacher whose laugh can be heard through the cactus-lined fence between our yards. We became friends almost instantly after I moved in, sharing play dates for the kids, late-night talks over iced coffee, and even backyard barbecues with our families, lounging in the golden Arizona evenings. If you'd watched us all from the outside, me, Jessica, Ethan, little Grace, you might have thought we were a picture of suburban contentment. Life here looked calm, almost idyllic. But that's the thing about appearances. There's always more lurking beneath the surface. What people couldn't see were the cracks, quietly forming in the foundation of my life. Ethan, with his increasingly distant gazes and long business trips, began to feel like a stranger right in my own home. Jessica, always so attentive and supportive, seemed to win Ethan's attention more easily than I ever could. Still, I clung to the routines that made up my days. Drop-offs at school, morning coffee on the porch, Sunday brunches with Jessica and her husband, never suspecting just how precarious my happiness had become. If I'd known then what was coming, maybe I would have paid closer attention. But hindsight, as people here say, is always 20/20. The first fracture. It started off with small, almost imperceptible shifts. Little things I could have shrugged off if I hadn't sensed the creeping chill settling in my marriage. For the first few years, Tom and I were inseparable, always catching each other's eyes across crowded rooms, always reaching for one another, even in sleep. But as the seasons changed, so did he. I didn't want to believe it at first. I tried so hard not to see what was right in front of me, but the signs were impossible to ignore. Tom's schedule was the first thing that caught my attention. His job at the marketing firm had always been demanding, but suddenly, he started coming home later than usual. He offered vague explanations. A client dinner here, an out-of-town meeting there. At first, I waited up for him, sitting on the living room couch with my knees hugged to my chest, listening to the refrigerator hum and the clock ticking on the wall. Most nights, he would walk in after midnight, smelling more like expensive cologne and someone else's laughter than like the man I married. Then came the distance, not physical, so much as emotional. Tom had always been good at making me laugh, but now my jokes seemed to float past him without landing. When I asked him about his day, his eyes would glaze over, lost in thought, answering with a distracted, "Fine," or worse, a dismissive shrug. There were fewer sticky notes on the fridge, fewer quick kisses on his way out the door. The warmth between us cooled into a polite awkwardness. Meanwhile, Ellie, my best friend of nearly a decade, started spending more time at our house than usual. She and Tom had always been friendly, but lately, their conversations grew softer and more secretive. I'd walk into the kitchen and find them talking in low voices, glancing up at me as if I'd interrupted something private. Ellie was always quick with an excuse, helping me plan Grace's birthday, dropping off baked goods, venting about her own failing relationship. But sometimes, I'd catch Tom watching her, the way he hadn't looked at me in a long time, a mixture of longing and regret. All these details piled up inside me. Late-night texts Tom quickly deleted. Ellie's perfume lingering in the hallway, even after she'd left. The way their laughter seemed to have a private rhythm. The first fracture wasn't a crash or a thunderclap. It was a slow, quiet splintering, a sense that the foundation of my life was shifting beneath my feet. I realized that something precious was slipping away, and I was powerless to stop it. The fateful night and crushing truth. The night everything changed was a suffocatingly hot Friday in late July. The Arizona air didn't cool even after sunset. Heat radiated from the pavement like a ghost that refused to be exorcised. I had just managed to put Grace to bed, promising her that Daddy would be home before she woke up, a promise I'd learned the hard way not to make. By 10 p.m., the house was still and silent, and Ethan still hadn't returned or texted where he was. I busied myself to ignore the anxiety gnawing at me, folding laundry that didn't need to be folded, mopping a kitchen floor that was already clean, organizing old mail into tidy piles. My heartbeat echoed with each muted tick of the clock. I checked Ethan's location on my phone, a habit I'd picked up in the last few uncertain months, and saw that he was less than a block away. Relief flickered in my chest, but it was quickly replaced by worry when I noticed our driveway was empty. Suddenly, a soft buzz vibrated across the marble countertop. Ethan's phone glowed with a new message. He must have left it here before heading out to grab a beer with friends. My eyes darted guiltily to the screen. I hesitated, but curiosity and an aching need for answers overpowered my conscience. The message preview was simple. Jessica's name popped up first. Her words, syrupy sweet. Miss you already. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. XOXO. A chill crept up my spine. My face flamed with embarrassment, even though no one was there to see it. I shouldn't have read more, but my hands moved as if possessed, scrolling through an unsettling thread of messages. Details of rendezvous and stolen moments spilled across the screen as vivid as a slap to the face. Pet names, shared secrets, photos taken in corners I recognized as Jessica's living room. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt. My breath caught in my throat. The floor threatened to give out beneath me. I clamped my eyes shut and willed myself not to cry, refusing to expend any more tears on a betrayal that had, somewhere deep down, always been lurking at the edge of my mind. Hot shame burned my cheeks, not just at Ethan or Jessica, but at myself for not seeing sooner, for letting my guard down in the name of friendship and trust. I walked numbly into my bedroom, sinking onto the edge of the bed as the house hummed with its usual night sounds. My mind replayed the evidence on that phone over and over, and each time it hurt a little less, replaced by a growing anger. I pressed my hands to my chest and made myself this silent promise. I wouldn't let them destroy me. They didn't know it, but they'd just given me a reason to become stronger than I'd ever been. As the magnitude of the truth settled, my sadness began to morph, almost imperceptibly, into resolve. I pieced together half-remembered conversations, odd glances at neighborhood cookouts, Jessica's gentle inquiries about my marriage, Ethan's sudden insistence on privacy. It all made a terrible, infuriating sense now. By the dim glow of my bedside lamp, I didn't just mourn the loss of my marriage. I began to hatch the faint outline of a plan, something to reclaim my dignity, one deliberate step at a time. There was a storm brewing inside me, but all anyone would see was calm. And that, I decided, was how my story of broken trust would become one of reckoning. The silent revenge plan, in the heart of the night, as the weight of Ethan and Jessica's betrayal pressed upon my chest. I made a decision. I would not cave to messy confrontations or public breakdowns. Tears wouldn't earn my self-respect back. I resolved to become calculating, purposeful, and silent. The sweetest justice, I told myself, would be exposing the truth as elegantly and as painfully as their deception had been crafted. My first move was to gather proof, not accusations. Every message, every photo, and timestamp I screenshotted and backed up to a hidden drive. I bought a simple voice recorder and placed it discreetly in our hallway console, the same spot Ethan and Jessica often stood whispering after weekend barbecues. I spent the next days straddling the line between my usual routine, packing Grace's lunch, waving to neighbors, pretending to care about casual PTA drama, and my new mission, collecting the puzzle pieces of their dishonesty while never allowing suspicion to ruffle my surface. Jessica was the first to notice my withdrawal. She dropped off coffee one afternoon, her face a study of sunny concern. "You okay, Maddie? You've seemed preoccupied." I almost laughed, a brittle sound I managed to swallow. "Just tired," I replied, careful to keep the shuttered look from my eyes. Underneath, I sorted every smile and gesture into a growing ledger of evidence. I noted which nights Ethan worked late, and when Jessica's car was absent from her driveway at the same time. Saturday came, and with it, an opportunity. Jessica's husband, Eric, mentioned his upcoming birthday. A barbecue, families invited, the whole backyard strung with lights. I offered to help organize the Slideshow tribute, something Eric always enjoyed. Privately, I used the chance to slip into Jessica's home, fetching an old photo album as Jessica fiddled in the kitchen. I found a folder in her home office labeled Summer Mist. It was innocuous enough, except inside were snaps of neighborhood picnics, recipes, and a subfolder labeled with Ethan's initials. My heart hammered as I copied them, barely blinking as I forced myself to finish the conversation like nothing had happened. My operation grew more methodical. The pain faded, replaced by a sense of control. I began logging Jessica and Ethan's activities with almost clinical detachment. Times, dates, places, small overlaps no one else would catch. The temptation to shout, to confront them both, was overwhelming, but I wouldn't risk a denial or an easy excuse. I wanted the audience to be undeniable, the humiliation as public as their laughter had always been private. For days, every gesture I made, every pleasantry I exchanged, was performance. I poured wine for Ethan at dinner, packed Jessica's son's lunch for a field trip, all while my phone buzzed with hidden files and downloaded voice memos. It was a theater, and I was its quiet director. What they'd done hurt, but soon I would show them what I could do when I stopped being the trusting friend and started being the wronged woman with truth on her side. As I assembled my arsenal, I chose my moment, Eric's big birthday bash, where friends, family, and half the neighborhood would gather, where nobody would see me coming. Every story has a reckoning, I mused, and sometimes the best revenge is measured, sharp, and utterly irrefutable. The days of preparation for the final act, if anyone had watched me that week, they'd have seen nothing out of the ordinary, a woman engrossed in the steady rhythms of suburban life. I kept up my appearances meticulously, smiling cheerfully during morning drop-offs at the elementary school, exchanging pleasantries with neighbors, chatting with the grocery store cashier whose name I'd known for years. Each action was deliberate, designed to preserve the illusion of a wife and mother who had everything in order. But inside, I was electric with tension, my mind racing nonstop with plans, contingencies, scenarios for the perfect unveiling. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat more than a few bites at a time, and yet I'd never felt so alive, with purpose. I started my days early, making fresh pancakes for Gracie, so our kitchen stayed scented with cinnamon and comfort, anything to anchor her in normalcy, while the world as I knew it quietly revolved. After I dropped her off, I'd drive laps around our neighborhood, replaying every moment that had led me here. Sometimes I'd park at the far end of the strip mall lot and sit in silence, scrolling through the secret folder on my phone. Screenshots, voice memos, receipts, even a few surveillance photos taken with my hands shaking from adrenaline and disbelief. The evidence was damning, but it wasn't enough. I wanted my plan to be bulletproof, impossible to deny or explain away. To the outside world, including to Tom and Ellie, I appeared uncharacteristically helpful. When Tom's mother called about her birthday celebration, I volunteered to coordinate the family slideshow, ostensibly so that I could organize the photos, but truly as cover for gathering more information from his laptop and phone. I even baked extra cookies for Ellie, dropping them off with little notes about how much I valued our friendship, just to keep her guard down. My stomach twisted every time I saw her, but I'd mastered the art of casual small talk. Never so much as letting a crack show in my voice. Night after night, after Gracie fell asleep, with a favorite book tucked beneath her pillow, I would tiptoe downstairs. There, at the kitchen table, I spread out my arsenal, printed images, audio files transferred from the tiny recorder in the console table, accounts of every day and night that didn't add up. I cataloged every detail in a battered blue notebook, using color-coded highlighters as if I were studying for an exam that would decide the rest of my life. The sight of their emails and texts stung, but the act of organizing them gave me a strange, icy calm. The pain was still raw, but now it had a purpose. I'd learned, painfully, that revenge wasn't a flash of anger, but a long, patient play. I mapped out every person who would be at the birthday party. Tom's extended family, old college friends, co-workers, even Ellie's husband and her twin daughters. I made a list of which relatives loved to gossip and which ones took photos for the family Facebook page. I practiced my neutral smile in the mirror, repeating to myself that this was no longer about humiliation for its own sake, but about forcing the truth into the open, once and for all. There were quiet moments of doubt, of course. On Thursday night, while the house was silent except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan, I sat on the back porch and stared out at our withered lawn. What if my plan backfired? What if it hurt Gracie or destroyed relationships that didn't deserve to be broken? I pressed my palms into my eyes and made myself remember every betrayal, every lie, every half-truth, the way Tom and Ellie had smiled across the dinner table and presumed I saw nothing. The resolve came back, clear and sharp. Preparation extended even to logistics. On Friday, I went to the electronics store and bought an extra USB drive, so there'd be no chance I'd lose my cache of evidence. I practiced plugging it into the big smart TV in our living room, timing the sequence step by step. If anyone came home unexpectedly, I had a backup plan, an innocuous family slideshow as a decoy, with all the photos neatly labeled. My heart hammered in my chest every time I rehearsed, but I pressed on, never letting myself hesitate for long. The day before the party, I treated myself to a manicure, as if steeling myself for battle. The nail technician chirped about her own family as she buffed and painted, and I went along with it, nurturing the illusion of normalcy. Underneath, my nerves crackled with anticipation. I was so close, now I could taste it. In the evenings, I rehearsed my words for the moment of truth, weighing each possible reaction from Tom and Ellie, imagining the stunned silence when the evidence came to light. My hands shook only a little when I packed the USB in my purse and checked 3 times that I hadn't forgotten it. On the morning of the party, the house was filled with chaotic laughter and the smells of bacon and toast. Tom was distracted, typing on his laptop, and Ellie texted me about picking up balloons on her way. I responded with a cheerful emoji, then retreated to my bedroom to center myself. Today was the day. The cast was assembled. The set was perfect. My daughter danced, oblivious, in her pink pajamas, as the wheels of my plan spun ever closer to the moment everything would change. Standing in front of the mirror and smoothing down my dress, I felt an odd sense of gratitude amidst the heartbreak. I was no longer the same woman who had clung to hope in the face of denial. In just a few hours, the truth would finally become impossible to ignore. I picked up my purse, tucked the USB beneath my makeup bag, and whispered a small promise to myself. After this, no matter what happened, I would be free. The truth unveiled. The day of the party dawned bright and too hot, with the promise of summer in the Arizona air making everything shimmer. My hands trembled a little as I rolled the USB drive between my fingers. Its weight, feeling as significant as a stone attached to memory. I replayed my plan for the 1000th time. Breathe, observe, keep my voice steady, and let the evidence speak for itself. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about finally calling things by their true names, tearing away the last veils of secrecy that stifled every corner of my life. By early afternoon, the house was a scene of orchestrated chaos. Laughter tumbled between the kitchen and the backyard. Gracie darted between adults, her face sticky with lemonade, oblivious to the gathering storm. Tom grilled chicken on the patio, his relaxed posture infuriating in its ease. Ellie milled about with her signature potato salad and a practiced smile, weaving between groups of old friends and cousins. No one paid any special attention to me, just another wife, another hostess, blending seamlessly into the suburban tableau. That was what I needed. I made small talk with Tom's relatives, accepted compliments on decorations, and handed out slices of cake with the smile I'd worn for months. Yet beneath the mundane chatter, my thoughts spun. I caught fleeting glances between Tom and Ellie, too swift to be noticed by most, but now blindingly obvious to me. A shared look, a brush of hands near the snack table, laughter barely covering something deeper. As evening approached, the party began to pulse with music, children's songs melting into old rock ballads, conversations growing bolder as more wine and beer flowed. I found my moment during the Slideshow,
Stop right there.
a tradition
Zoom
at
in
every
on the
birthday
exchange.
bash, where
him. I
embarrassing baby
recognize the
photos
tattoo.
and silly family videos flickered on screen, filling the living room with nostalgia and laughter. I'd arranged everything perfectly, offering to run the tech so nobody else would interfere. No one suspected a thing. After years of being invisible, it was all too easy to slip beneath everyone's notice. My chest tightened as the last innocuous picture faded, and I quietly swapped the USB for the one that held my cache of evidence. I stood in the dim light, my pulse thunderous in my ears, For a split second, I wavered. Was I really about to do this? But then I remembered every night spent staring at the ceiling, every lie, every hot flush of shame at their secrets. And the answer was yes. Absolutely yes. Without ceremony, the first message appeared on screen. A text exchange between Tom and Ellie, overlaying a photo of their shoes, side by side, beneath a coffee shop table. At first, people blinked at the unfamiliar format, confused. But as the images and messages continued to appear, private jokes, cryptic, "I miss you" messages, photos snapped in what was clearly our own kitchen, the reality began to set in. The room grew silent, as if the air had been sucked out all at once. Murmurs rose, a confused tangle of questioning voices. Tom's mother's mouth hung open in shock. Ellie's husband's face drained of color, hands trembling, his sides. Tom froze, his fork suspended in midair, unable to look away from the damning evidence, unspooling in front of our friends, family, everyone. Ellie pressed her hands to her mouth, a low, strangled sound escaping her as the magnitude of exposure dawned. Slowly, I stepped forward, letting the display play out, each screenshot driving the truth deeper into the center of our carefully constructed world. I had no speech prepared. I didn't need one. The facts on the screen were louder than any accusation could be. I met Tom's eyes, wide and glassy, his confidence shattered, and saw, finally, not a partner, but a stranger I'd been lying beside for years. Ellie seemed to fold into herself, shrinking as the eyes of the crowd closed in on her. There was no outburst, no dramatic screaming, no shattering dishes, just the absolute silence of truth, settling where denial used to live. I looked at Gracie, too young to decipher the meaning behind the adult's shocked expressions, and felt a surge of bittersweet relief. My daughter deserved a home founded on honesty, not deception, whatever new shape that home would take. I reached for her hand, grounding myself as the chaos unfolded. People began to whisper, some moving to comfort Tom's mother, others asking questions in hushed, disbelieving voices. Tom stammered, trying desperately to find a loophole in the evidence. But the timeline was airtight. Ellie attempted an apology, her voice breaking, but her words disintegrated before they could land. There was no watching this unfold without being altered by it. No repair for what had been laid so brutally bare. The strangest emotion was not triumph, but release. I felt the unbearable tension in my shoulders and neck begin to melt, replaced with something quieter and steadier. No more secrets, no more anxiety at every notification buzz, no more agony over deciphering half-truths in my own home. People around me avoided my gaze, unsure whether to pity or congratulate me. But I didn't really need either. I had reclaimed the story I'd been forced to watch from the sidelines. When the display ended and the whispers simmered into a heavy hush, I took Gracie by the hand. My words, when I finally spoke, were measured and calm. Thank you for coming. I think this is where we say goodnight. No tears, no dramatic exit, just a clear, steadfast closing of one chapter and the first steps into another. As I guided my daughter toward the door, I heard the party unravel behind me. Some called my name, a few tried to offer comfort. I walked straight ahead, head high. Outside, the sun had slipped behind the neighbor's roofline, bathing everything in that pink gold light you only see after a summer storm. I looked up, drawing in a deep breath of evening air. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I had let the truth loose, and whatever happened now, no matter how hard or lonely, would be real. That was enough. That was freedom. The price of betrayal. Walking out of that house, my house, The one I'd scrubbed clean and filled with laughter. The place I'd tried to patch over with hope. Felt both like a death and a strange kind of birth. Gracie's small hand clung to mine, her gaze darting between my face and the somber scene behind us. Each step I took felt heavy with the weight of what I was leaving behind. Years of shared morning coffee, impromptu dance sessions in the kitchen, the secret, dumb little rituals that once stitched together our family fabric. But beneath the ache, there was a raw, buzzing sense of relief. The pretending was finally over, and what remained was real, even if it was painful. For days after the party, our suburban neighborhood seemed to hum with a different energy. People watched my windows with sideways glances. Their smiles were awkward and brittle, the kind reserved for witnesses to disaster. Some left covered dishes at my porch, a silent offering that said, "We're sorry, but we'd prefer not to be involved any further." Others whispered behind half-closed blinds, gossip galloping ahead of compassion. I realized quickly that betrayal, exposed in such a public way, doesn't just split a marriage or a friendship. It fractures entire communities. It forces people to pick sides, or worse, to pretend nothing happened at all. Tom tried to call me. He left voicemail after voicemail, voice cracking with frantic apologies and desperate threads of hope. Please to at least talk things through for Gracie's sake. Each message left me feeling hollow. I listened, but stayed silent. I could hear the confusion in his words, the realization settling that he wasn't in control of the story anymore. Ellie, too, tried to reach me with texts that swung wildly between self-pity and remorse. Too many words, too late. Her husband Eric moved out days after the party. His own world ruptured in the backlash. For all the years we'd woven our families together, now the strands had been ripped apart, and everyone seemed unsure what to do with the tangled mess left behind. There were nights I couldn't sleep, staring at the ceiling, haunted by doubts far sharper than anger. What if my daughter suffered because of my choices? What if I'd misjudged or overexposed, irreversibly damaging more than just two people's egos? I replayed Gracie's questioning eyes as she watched adults dissolve into arguments and tears. I tried, in every gentle bedtime conversation, to reassure her that none of this was her fault, that grown-ups sometimes make terrible mistakes, but that she was loved, absolutely and without condition. The silence in the house took a while to get used to. There was no more background noise of Tom tapping at his laptop. No more shared glances over breakfast. I took up new routines, watering the plants, jogging at dawn under the Arizona sunrise, learning to cook wild new recipes just for me and Gracie. Some days, I felt strength bloom in unexpected places, filing paperwork at the lawyer's office, standing firm during custody meetings, refusing to let regret wilt me into bitterness. Other days, the ache was physical, a longing for ease, for someone to lean on, for the comfort of old, familiar patterns. Financially, things became tighter. The safety net we'd built as a two-income family thinned out fast, and with it, all the illusions about security. I hustled harder at my job, picking up extra shifts, navigating the mishmash of childcare and school events as a single parent. It was exhausting, but also clarifying. For the first time, I understood what it meant to own every decision in my life, from the groceries I bought to the boundaries I set with the outside world. I built new rules, no more secrets, no more sacrificing my own well-being for someone else's comfort. As the weeks stretched into months, I began to see subtle signs of healing. Gracie and I drew closer, our bond cemented by shared resilience. We started new traditions: Friday night movie marathons, spontaneous art projects, girls-only road trips into the desert. Friends who mattered stayed true, offering support without prying or judgment. I discovered a steady core in myself, one that didn't rely on anyone else's approval or attention to feel worth something. For Tom and Ellie, the price was swift and merciless. Divorce filings, tense custody schedules, the slow burn of isolation as former friends drifted away. Tom's charm, which had once enchanted everyone from neighbors to co-workers, no longer shielded him from the reality of consequences. Ellie lost her marriage, and the school where she worked buzzed with rumor. Their choices had cost them nearly everything. I found myself feeling pity, then letting it go. The universe, it seemed, rarely needs help handing out justice. But the true price of betrayal, the one that doesn't show up on legal papers or quiet bank statements, is the way it rewrites your sense of what's possible. I grew cautious, sometimes suspicious, about letting people too close. There were days I missed the version of myself who could believe with reckless abandon, who saw the best in everyone and trusted love to fix anything. Yet bit by bit, I built up a new kind of faith. Not blind trust, but hard-earned wisdom. I learned to forgive myself, mostly, and to accept that happiness could look utterly different than what I'd once imagined. Looking back, if you'd told me that the cost of uncovering the truth would be so high, I'm not sure I would have believed you. I'd thought the most painful thing in the world would be losing my home, my marriage, my best friend. But the true pain, I realized, came from living in denial, shrinking myself to fit a life that was built on dishonesty. The moment I demanded the truth, as ugly and as public as it was, I set myself free. Betrayal wounds, sharp and deep, but it also carves out space for something new. I see now that survival isn't just about picking up the pieces, but about letting go of the ones that no longer serve you. Gracie and I have our own constellation of memories, some scarred, some radiant, all ours. I tell her stories of my childhood in Monterey, of starting over in America, of finding strength where I least expected. She listens, wide-eyed, offering hugs and laughter that feel more healing than any peace offering left at my door. Life after betrayal is quieter, less certain, sometimes lonelier. Yet in that stillness, I found a fierce hope, the belief that what's genuine is worth any cost. The path ahead is mine to choose, not dictated by a partner's secrets, nor confined by old wounds. I am scarred, yes, but also unbreakable. And in the end, that's the truest freedom I know.